The cacophony of the press conference swirled around him like a tempest, cameras flashing like manic lightning, reporters' voices overlapping into a dissonant roar. Yet in that chaos, time seemed to stretch, slow, crystallize, the question hanging in the air with the weight of an anvil: what type of lady will you like to marry? The words puncturing the carefully constructed facade of his celebrity persona. A persona built on witty comebacks and rehearsed charm, now crumbling under the simplicity of a query he'd never truly considered, his mind racing backward through years of red carpets and hollow encounters, fleeting romances dissolved into tabloid headlines, groupies whose names he forgot by morning, influencers who loved his fame more than his fractured soul. He stood there, a mannequin in a tailored suit, suddenly aware of the void beneath the glitter, the loneliness that no amount of adoring comments could soothe. The emptiness of a life measured in followers instead of moments, in trends instead of truths. His throat tightened, not from stage fright, but from the raw, unscripted realization that he had no answer, that he never paused long enough to ask himself what love might look like beyond the filters, the curated posts, the performative affection. The room waited, breathless, pens poised, but he said nothing, his silence louder than any soundbite. A deafening admission that the king of social media, the monarch of superficiality, had never once dared to imagine a future where someone might see him, truly see him, beyond the screen. The days that followed were a blur of self-imposed exile. His penthouse, once a stage for lavish parties and Instagrammable sunsets, now a mausoleum of his own making. He wandered its marble halls like a ghost, tracing the cold edges of his possessions: a gold-plated espresso machine unused, a grand piano collecting dust, a closet of designer clothes that felt like costumes. He'd swiped through his phone, thumb hovering over notifications, 10M likes, 50K comments, each digit a hollow echo, a numbers game that no longer fed his soul. He began to delete apps one by one, each tap a severing of ties to the persona he'd crafted. Twitter, gone, its endless rage and hot takes. Instagram, deleted, the grid of his life reduced to a blank screen. TikTok, erased, the dances and challenges now meaningless noise, until his world went dark, silent, the first true silence he'd known since his rise to fame. And in that silence, he heard the whispers of his own thoughts, unedited, unfiltered. Terrifying. He'd stare out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below, its lights twinkling like distant stars, wondering how many others down there felt just as alone, just as disconnected in their curated realities. He'd order groceries under a pseudonym, the delivery man nodding politely, unaware he just handed avocados to a man who once broke the internet with a single shirtless selfie. Nights were the worst. The absence of pings and dings leaving him raw, exposed. He'd lie awake, tracing the cracks in his own psyche, asking himself questions he'd bury for years. Who am I without the likes, without the noise? What do I want? Who could ever want me? Not the persona, not the brand, but the man beneath, flawed, fragile, yearning. The bookstore was a relic, nestled between a boarded-up bodega and a pawnshop in a neighborhood the city had forgotten, its sign creaking in the wind, letters faded to ghosts. Clara's Chronicles. He'd wandered there aimlessly, drawn by the scent of aged paper and dust, a scent that felt like a balm after years of sterile air fresheners and photoshoot smoke machines. The bell jingled as he entered, and there she was, Clara, a woman carved from centuries of stories, her silver hair piled into a loose bun, cat-eye glasses perched on a nose dotted with freckles, a cardigan draped over bony shoulders. She didn't look up from her ledger, her voice a dry rasp. "If you're here for the Wi-Fi, darling, it's been broken since the 90s, he froze, half expecting her to recognize him, to gasp, to fawn, but she merely gestured to a teetering stack of books. Mysteries are on the left, romances on the right, and don't touch the first editions unless you've got gloves. He wandered the aisles, fingers brushing spines, titles whispering promises of escape, Pride and Prejudice, Wuthering Heights, Jane Eyre, classics he'd pretended to read in interviews, claiming they'd shaped him. Though he'd never cracked their covers. Clara appeared beside him. Suddenly, a phantom, her eyes sharp behind her glasses. "You look like someone who's never met Elizabeth Bennet." She plucked a dog-eared copy from the shelf, thrusting it into his hands. "Read this. It'll either fix you or ruin you, no in-between." He laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that startled them both. "What's your name, kid?" she asked, and he hesitated. Alex, his real name, and used for years, buried under hashtags and stage names. "Well, Alex," she said, "you've got the look of a man who's lost his plot. Stick around, books have a way of finding the missing pieces." He did, returning daily, sitting in a cracked leather armchair as Clara held court, dissecting Austen's wit, Bronte's passion, Tolstoy's despair, her voice weaving spells, her wisdom a lifeline. Slowly, the bookstore became his sanctuary, a place where he wasn't a celebrity, but a student, where the only followers were characters in yellowed pages. And the only validation came in the turn of a phrase. Rain lashed against the bookstore's windows, the rhythm steady, relentless. Clara sipped her tea, a chipped mug emblazoned with * "Don't talk to me before coffee," her gaze piercing as ever. "You're running," she said, not a question, an accusation. Alex stiffened. "From what?" he countered, feigning nonchalance. * "From the mirror," she replied, "from the man you see when the cameras are off." He looked away, the truth a knot in his throat. "You think deleting apps will fix you," she snorted. "Boy, you can't outrun yourself, but you can try to outgrow yourself." He stared into his own tea, the leaves forming shapes he couldn't decipher. "What if I don't like who I find?" he whispered. Clara leaned forward, her voice softening. "Then you'll have the rare chance to change. Most people die never daring to look." Outside, the city hummed, unaware of the metamorphosis underway, while miles away, in a subway station thick with the tang of urine and pretzels, Lila tucked her violin under her chin, her bow trembling as she played a Bach sonata, the notes clashing with the screech of trains, commuters hurrying past, tossing coins into her case without meeting her eyes, her fingers calloused, her rent overdue, her dreams of concert halls suffocating under the weight of survival. She played on, her music a rebellion, a prayer, a lifeline, each note a secret message to a world too busy to listen. Her eyes closed as she poured her hunger, her hope, her unsung grief into the strings, unaware that fate, that fickle puppeteer, was tightening the threads, drawing her closer to the man who'd one day rewrite her story, and she his. The charity gala was a spectacle of opulence, a sea of sequins and silk, champagne flutes clinking like wind chimes in a storm, yet to him, it felt alien, a costume party where he'd forgotten his mask, the air thick with perfumed hypocrisy, hollow laughter ringing in his ears like funeral bells. He moved through the crowd mechanically, nodding at donors whose names blurred into titles: CEO, heiress, philanthropist, their hands clutching his like investors claiming stakes in his soul. He'd agreed to attend out of obligation, a last gasp of his old life, but now, adrift in the glitter, he wondered why he'd come at all until he heard it, a single violin note cutting through the din, sharp, aching, alive. His head turned, instinctive, primal, and there she was, Lila, tucked in a shadowed corner like a secret, her eyes closed, her bow dancing across strings as if wrestling grace from chaos. The room faded, the noise dimmed. Her music a language he'd never known he understood, a ballad of resilience and rage, of sleepless nights and stubborn hope. He stood transfixed, a man who'd serenaded millions with auto-tuned emptiness now silenced by raw, untamed beauty. Her melody unspooled his carefully knotted lies, the curated self dissolving note by note, until he was just Alex, bare, trembling, seen. Their eyes met as the final chord hung between them, a bridge spanning universes, and in that heartbeat, he forgot the cameras, the crowd, the crushing weight of his own name. He stepped toward her, desperate to speak, to confess, to beg her to never stop playing, but a waiter jostled his arm, champagne splashing his cuff, and when he looked up, she was gone, vanished like a mirage, leaving only a lone glove on her abandoned chair, its fabric still warm from her hand. He clutched it like a lifeline, the scent of rosin and jasmine lingering, a ghost of her presence. His assistant materialized, muttering about PR obligations and damage control, but he shoved past, barking orders to find her, track her, name your price, his voice fraying at the edges, a king dethroned by a single glance, the glove pressed to his chest as he fled the gala, paparazzi shouting, "Who is she?" flashes exploding like gunfire. But he didn't care, the world could burn, he'd found something real, something hers, and he'd tear the city apart to hear her play again. The glove became an obsession, A holy relic in his hollowed-out world, he hired detectives with shadowed pasts and fat paychecks, men who asked no questions as they combed dive bars and conservatories, bribed stagehands, threatened talent agents. Find the violinist, he'd growl, pacing his penthouse like a caged beast, the glove now encased in glass. A morbid shrine, tabloids caught wind, headlines screeching celebrity stalker. Obsession or love, but he ignored them, even as his team warned of backlash, of sponsors dropping him, of Julian, his nemesis, sharpening knives in the dark. Julian, the tech titan with a smirk like a scalpel, who'd once drunkenly bet him 10 million he'd never quit social media. Julian, who now leaked DMs from their frat days, videos, boasts, conquests dragging his redemption arc through mud. Meet the real Alex. The tweets sneered, fraud, predator, liar. The public turned rabid. Protesters picketing Clara's bookstore, cancel him painted on its windows. Clara herself hospitalized, her cough worsening with each phone call. Leave me be, boy, she rasped, save yourself. But he roared, no, pouring millions into lawyers, bodyguards, private nurses, his days a blur of court filings and death threats, nights spent hunched over blueprints, redesigning the bookstore into a fortress, ink staining his hands as he scribbled, nonprofit, community hub, safe space. The nurses whispered, he's lost his mind. But he knew the truth. This was the first time he'd ever fought for something that wasn't himself. Julian's face flashed on news feeds, smug. Alex is a virus, and I'm the cure. But Alex barely blinked, fixated on a grainy subway security tape. Lila's figure blurred but unmistakable, her bow a metronome for the damned. Where are you? He begged the screen. Let me fix this, unaware that Lila, miles away, was scrubbing toilets at a motel, her violin case gathering dust under a bed. Her fingers raw from bleach, the gala glove hidden in her drawer, a relic of the night she'd foolishly hoped someone might hear her, really hear her, before reality spat her back onto the streets. She'd seen the headlines, the stalker rumors, rich men don't chase women like us, her roommate warned, they collect us. But Lila's heart, stubborn as her music, dared to wonder, what if he's different, even as she tossed the glove into a dumpster then dove after it, weeping. Clara's hospital room reeked of antiseptic and unspoken goodbyes, machines beeping a dissonant elegy. Alex slumped in a plastic chair, stubble shadowing his jaw, his suit rumpled. You look like hell, Clara coughed, her voice a ghost of its former bite. Still prettier than your first editions, he retorted, the old banter papering over cracks. She gestured to a tattered copy of Jane Eyre on her bedside. Read to me, she ordered. And he did, his voice cracking on I am no bird, and no net ensnares me. Clara's hand, frail as parchment, gripped his. Listen, you idiot, she wheezed. This isn't about saving me or that damned shop, it's about you finally growing a spine. He bristled. I'm trying. No, she snapped, you're atoning. There's a difference. The truth hung like a blade. You think money erases guilt, she continued. But that girl, the violinist, she doesn't need your savior complex, she needs you to see her, like I saw you. Tears blurred his vision. What if I'm too late? Clara's laugh became a rattling cough. Then you'll have a hell of a eulogy. That night, the developers backed off, the bookstore saved, Clara's victory sealed with a billionaire's check. But as Alex stood in the empty shop, its shelves whispering secrets, he felt no triumph, only dread. The nurse's call came at dawn. She's gone. His knees buckled. No. But Clara's final note awaited him, slipped into his coat pocket. Alex, stop reading and go live your damn story. P.S. Tell Elizabeth Bennet I said hello. Winter's first snow draped the city in borrowed innocence, the bookstore's awning sagging under the weight of silence. Alex stood inside, tracing Clara's initials carved into the checkout desk, his breath fogging the glass. When the violin began, a mournful refrain he'd know in any lifetime, he stumbled into the cold, snow stinging his cheeks. There she was, Lila, playing beneath a street lamp's halo, her coat threadbare, her cheeks hollowed by hunger and cold, the same Bach sonata from the gala, but slower, angrier, a dirge for lost chances. You, he breathed, the word a cloud between them. She froze, mid-note. You, she echoed, voice sharp as splintered ice. Did you follow me? He recoiled. I've been searching for months. Why? She demanded. Because you left. He gestured to the glove, now frayed, clutched in his fist. You left this, she scoffed, and you left everything, your fame, your fans, your life for a glove. Her laugh was brittle. Or is this another stunt, a viral redemption arc? He flinched. You think this is fake? I think you're a man who's never been told no, she spat, yanking a tabloid from her bag. Julian exposes Alex's charity scam. His face splashed beside Clara's obituary. You used that sweet old lady, she hissed, just like you're using me. No, he choked. Clara was. Stop, she cut him off. Rich boys don't save people, they own them. She turned, violin case banging her thigh. Wait, he begged, please, but she vanished into the blizzard, his scream swallowed by the wind. I love you. Words he'd never spoken, to anyone, now buried in snow. He collapsed on the curb, glove pressed to his lips, tasting salt and wool and regret, while blocks away, Lila leaned against a brick wall, sobbing, her fingers tracing the newspaper's photo of Clara. Who are you? She whispered. And why did he love you more than me? The storm raged on, unanswered. The late-night studio lights burned hotter than judgment. Sweat beading on his brow as the host leaned in, a shark scenting blood. So, Alex, rumors say you're searching for a mystery woman. The audience tittered, phones raised, hungry for content. He shifted, the leather couch creaking like a coffin lid. She's not a rumor, he said, too sharp, too raw. The host's grin widened. Come on, give us the deets. Blonde, brunette, a secret Vegas wedding. The crowd hooted, but Alex's hands clenched, knuckles white. She's a person, he stumbled, someone who doesn't care that I'm me. Silence fell. Awkward, heavy. The host blinked. Romantic, you can't. But Alex stood abruptly, mic screeching. No, you're not listening. She's real, she's out there, and I don't even know her name. The cameras zoomed, capturing the crack in his voice, the tremor in his jaw. If you're watching, he turned to Lens. Please, let me explain. The segment exploded, memes dubbing him Simp King, TikTokers lip-syncing his plea, talk show psychologists diagnosing narcissistic savior complex. But in a cramped studio apartment, Lila replayed the clip on a cracked phone, her roommate snorting. Girl, he's unhinged. But Lila rewound the moment his voice broke. She's real, her finger hovering over the screen. What if, she whispered, what if he's not lying? Her gaze drifted to the glove fish from the dumpster, its edges frayed, still smelling of him. Bergamot and desperation. She'd Googled him that night, falling into a rabbit hole of red carpet smirks and paparazzi meltdowns. But this man, this Alex, was unfamiliar, a shadow stripped bare. Could monsters cry real tears? She wondered, her thumb brushing the screen, his paused face pixelated, vulnerable. Or is this just another role? She tossed the phone, it clattering beneath the couch, where her violin case gathered dust. Its wood split from the night she'd smashed it against the wall. Stop dreaming, she hissed to herself. Men like him don't change. But dawn found her scrolling again, her reflection ghosting over his face on the screen. Two strangers orbiting a truth neither dared touch. Julian's revenge was a masterpiece of cruelty. The leaked emails hitting inboxes at midnight, just in time for the morning news. He'd bragged to his board, Alex's little bookstore pet project? A tax dodge, the headlines howled, fraud. Scam artists, protesters swarmed Clara's shop, now a boarded-up tomb. R.I.P. liar spray painted across her Pride and Prejudice mural. Alex stormed Julian's sleek high-rise, bypassing security with a snarl. You're dead, he roared. But Julian lounged in his ergonomic throne, smirking. Did I hurt your feelings? Screens behind him glowed with Lila's subway performances, footage dated, labeled, Subject 23. You've been watching her, Alex choked. Why? Julian shrugged. She's got potential, the word slithered, and you've made her famous. He flicked a key, Lila's face filling the wall. Imagine the bidding war for her story. Alex lunged, fists connecting with jawbone, security piling on. But not before he glimpsed the files. Lila Chin, 26, Juilliard dropout, father deceased, mother in hospice. His stomach roiled. You're a vulture, he spat, blood on his lip. No, Julian grinned, I'm a realist. You're the one playing house with a fantasy, thrown into the alley. Alex vomited into a puddle, rain mixing with tears. I'm sorry, Clara, I'm sorry, Lila. His phone buzzed, a notification, Lila Chen's Violin Fund, a GoFundMe page with $47 donated, her bio stark, medical bills, rent, strings. He emptied his accounts into it. $2 million. anonymous donor, then collapsed in the downpour, praying she'd take it, praying she'd run, while Lila stared at her phone, the number nonsensical, error. She refreshed, error. Her landlord pounded the door, rent or eviction, she whispered, error. The demolition orders came at dawn, the subway plaza's final hour marked by bulldozers growling at the gates. Lila stood amidst the rubble, her father's violin clutched to her chest, its wood splintered, neck cracked from the night she'd learned of his cancer's return. Play for me, Lila, he'd whispered. One last time, the bow had trembled, the notes a requiem. Now, the machines advanced, jaws gaping, Julian's face smirking from a live stream drone. Smile for the cameras, Miss Chen, his voice boomed, this is your big break. She raised the violin, not to play, but to smash. No, Alex's voice cut through, raw, ragged. He'd sprinted through block streets, suit torn. Stop the demolition, he screamed, I'll pay anything. Julian emerged, silk tie fluttering, 10 million, cash, now. The crowd gasped, workers muttering, insane. But Alex scrawled the check, shoving it at Julian, take it. But her violin stays. Julian's laugh echoed, you're buying trash. He sneered, pocketing the check. She's nothing. Alex turned, breathless. To Lila, you're everything, he said, too loud, too much, the words hanging, fragile. Her bow hovered, trembling. Why, she whispered, because you're the first real thing I've touched in years. He stepped closer, and I'm terrified. The admission hung between them. Sacred, terrifying. Her tears fell. You're a mess, she laughed, wet and broken. So are you, he grinned, perfect. The kiss was chaos, awkward, urgent, her bow clattering to the ground, his hands cradling her face like porcelain. The crowd erupted, phones alight, but they didn't care, the world narrowing to lips and breath and the shuddering relief of being known. Above, the drones circled, Julian's feed capturing every second. His smirk fading as comments flooded. We ship it, this is real, his fist clenched. No, he hissed, this is a fluke. But deep down, he envied the rawness, the recklessness, the humanity he'd sold long ago. Their love story went supernova, a hashtag, a fanfiction trope, a CNN segment debating the ethics of public proposals. But Alex and Lila hid in plain sight, renting a cramped walk-up above Clara's bookstore, its shelves half empty, her ghost lingering in the scent of Earl Grey and cat fur. They fought over burnt toast and Brahms. She hated his coffee, he hated her socks. They loved hating together. You'll get bored, he murmured one night, her head on his chest. You'll miss the fame. She traced his scars. You'll miss the solos, he countered. Never, she said, this is the best music I've ever made. Dawn found them rebuilding the subway plaza, blueprints spread on the floor. The Clara music school, she'd insisted. She'd hate that, he laughed. She'd love it. They worked side by side. Calloused hands and smudged ink. Her violin now repaired, its cracks gilded with gold, kintsugi, she called it, beautiful because it's broken. He kissed her then, slow, sweet. Like us, he said. Outside, paparazzi camped. But they didn't see Clara's final letter, slipped under the door that morning. Alex, don't mess this up. P.S. Tell Lila her vibrato's still shit.c. They framed it, hung it beside the glove, now displayed not as a shrine, but a reminder of second chances, of quiet symphonies, of love louder than fame. While far above, a plane pierced the clouds, Clara's ashes tucked in a Parisian urn, her voice lingering in the hum of the bookstore's lights. About damn time. The music school's skeletal frame rose from the ruins of the subway plaza like a phoenix reborn, its steel beams clawing at the sky as if conducting the heavens themselves. Alex and Lila stood amidst the construction chaos, hard hats tilted awkwardly, arguing over acoustics with the fervor of wartime generals. The domed ceiling needs to breathe, she insisted, waving her bow like a baton. Sound isn't a prisoner, it's a fugitive, he countered, scribbling equations on a blueprint stained with coffee rings. Workers chuckled, tossing lovebirds under their breath. But the truth was Messier, their love a mosaic of clashing harmonies. Nights spent pacing their cramped apartment, Lila's insomnia composing symphonies on the walls with her fingertips, Alex's guilt gnawing at him like termites. What if I ruined this too? He'd whisper to the dark, tracing the scars Julian's goons had left on his ribs. What if the world stops caring? Lila's answer was always the same, her lips against his pulse. Then we'll play for the rats and the ghosts. Dawn would find them back at the site, negotiating with contractors. their hands brushing like hesitant verse chords, the public's obsession with them had morphed, tabloids now peddling Lilac's merch, fan theories claiming Clara's ghost curated their playlists, tourists flocking to the plaza with selfie sticks, demanding the kiss reenactment. They obliged, lips meeting with performative sweetness, then laughing into each other's shoulders. We've become a damn Disney ride, Alex groaned. Shut up and spin me again, Prince Charming, Lila smirked, her laughter dissolving into the clang of hammers, but in stolen moments, they'd escaped to the half-built auditorium, Lila's violin echoing through naked rafters, Alex's voice tentative, relearning old pop ballads without autotune, their private rehearsals for a life unplugged. One afternoon, a busker outside played Clara's favorite Chopin nocturne. Lila froze mid-scale. She's here, Alex nodded, or we're both going insane. They tipped the busker $500, his jaw dropping. Play it at the opening, Lila said. And wear something that doesn't scream struggling artist asterisk, the man wept, hugging his accordion. See, Alex murmured, you're already changing lives. Lila's retort caught in her throat. We are, she corrected, their fingers entwined, grimy and glorious. Julian's envy festered in the shadows of his penthouse, its floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting a man he no longer recognized. His screens flickered with drone footage of the music school. Alex's laughter booming through speakers as he hoisted a giggling child onto his shoulders. Daddy's a hero, the girl squealed, her mother blushing. No, sweetie, that's Mr. Alexander. Julian's fist shattered a bourbon glass. Since when does he get to be happy? He'd grown up in Alex's shadow, their Ivy League rivalry a poison they'd both mistaken for ambition. He replayed their college days. Alex, the trust fund poet, Julian, the scholarship code monkey. You'll never be more than a parasite, Alex had sneered once, drunk on privilege and Pinot Noir. Now, the parasite had become a philanthropist, and Julian, the titan, felt microscopic. He hired a pianist to play Lila's compositions, dissecting her music for weakness. It's too raw, he told his therapist, too human. The therapist suggested jealousy. Julian fired her. He flew to Prague, bought a Stradivarius, tried to smash it, couldn't, hung it on his wall like a crucifix. I could have been a composer, he told his silent assistant. In another life, she nodded, bored. Should I cancel your meeting with the senator? No, he said, staring at the violin. Reschedule it, I'm going to New York. The plane ride was turbulence and tonic water, his notes app filled with unsent apologies and venom. Dear Alex, you win deleted. Dear Lila, he'll destroy you deleted. When he landed, he stood outside the music school, unrecognized in a baseball cap, watching Lila teach a street kid to hold a bow, her patience infinite, her smile unguarded. Julian's throat tightened. I could have been you, he whispered to Alex's reflection in the glass. But you never could have been me, a voice answered. Julian spun. But it was just a janitor, whistling as he mopped. The moment shattered, Julian fled, texting his broker, sell all shares in Stream Life, then buy every music school stock you can find. His assistant blinked. Sir, just do it, he snapped, tossing his phone into the Hudson, watching it sink like a confession. The foundation's letter arrived on parchment paper, its wax seal embossed with the crest of violins and quills. To the keepers of Clara's chronicle, it began, we request the honor of your presence. Lila read it aloud, perched on their kitchen counter, flour dusting her nose from a failed baking spree. Some fancy charity thing in Vienna. Alex groaned. Pass. But the postscript glowed like a blade. P.P.S. Ask Clara about Eleanor. They froze. The name a grenade in Clara's final days, her delirious murmurs of Ellie, the fountain, the letters, they'd dismissed it as morphine dreams. Now, Alex unearthed Clara's locked trunk from the bookstore's attic, its hinges screaming betrayal. Inside, bundles of letters tied with faded ribbons. My dearest Eleanor, the first began, Paris is ash without you. The pages spilled a love story buried by time. Clara and Eleanor, conservatory rebels in the 60s, their romance a secret symphony drowned by societal scorn. Father is sending me to Zurich, a 1963 letter wept. Marry him or rot. Eleanor's reply was a single sheet. I'll wait at the fountain. Come away with me. Clara never came. The trunk held playbills, dried roses, a diamond ring wrapped in newsprint. She chose fear, Lila realized, and spent her life atoning. Alex traced Clara's signature. Shaky in her final letter, tell Ellie, the fountain's still here. They booked flights to Vienna that night. The music school's opening postponed. This is bigger than us, Lila said, her fingers trembling as she packed Clara's letters. What if Eleanor's gone? Alex asked. Then we'll play for her ghost. Lila zipped the suitcase. Clara's counting on us. The taxi to JFK crawled through rain, Lila's head on Alex's shoulder. Do you think they're watching? She nodded toward the clouds. Clara's probably yelling at Eleanor for poor penmanship. Alex grinned, but his chest ached, the unspoken fear curdling. What if this quest unraveled them? What if the past demanded payment? What if love wasn't enough to bridge decades of silence? The plane ascended, Lila's hand in his, Clara's trunk in cargo, its secrets humming like a tuning fork. The Vienna ballroom was a gilded cage of chandeliers and champagne, aristocrats eyeing Alex and Lila like exotic insects, the American oddities. A countess sneered, her pearls clattering, but then she entered. Eleanor, 92, a spine of steel and snow-white hair swept into a defiant bun, her cane tapping a wartime rhythm. The room stilled. You, she pointed at Lila, play Clara's nocturne. The demand cracked like a whip. Lila's hands shook, but she obeyed, the violin's cry echoing through centuries of regret. Eleanor's eyes closed, a tear tracing her parchment skin. Louder, she barked. She never played timid. Alex stepped forward. We have letters, I know, Eleanor snapped. I wrote them, the crowd murmured, sensing blood sport. Eleanor rose, her voice a blade. You think this erases it? Your little school, your viral romance? Clara abandoned music, abandoned me, to rot in her bookstore of regrets. Lila played fiercer, the nocturne morphing into a rebel's anthem. She loved you, Alex shouted over the music. She died asking for you. Eleanor's cane clattered. Then why didn't she fight? The room gasped. Lila's bow snapped a string, the notes screeching into silence. Because she was a coward, Eleanor whispered. Like you, she turned to Alex. You ran from fame to hide in this girl's shadow. Lila stepped between them. And you've hidden in hatred for 60 years. So who's the coward now? The standoff crackled, generations of grief colliding. Then Eleanor laughed, a sound like shattered chandeliers. You've got her fire, she said to Lila. And you, she jabbed Alex's chest, asterisk her guilt. From her gown, she pulled a weathered score, our concerto, unfinished because she left. She thrust it at Lila. Finish it. I can't. You will, Eleanor commanded. Or her ghost will haunt us all. The next morning, paparazzi found Eleanor dead in her suite, a smile on her lips, the concerto clutched to her chest. Her will leaving millions to the music school. For Clara, who finally kept her promise, the world wept. Hashtags blooming. Clara and Eleanor finished the concerto, but Alex and Lila sat on a Vienna rooftop, the score between them. We can't play this, Lila said. It's their story. Alex kissed her hair. Then let's make it ours. Dawn broke as they scribbled notes in the margins, their harmonies tangled with Clara's, Eleanor's, and the silent echoes of every love that dared to outlive its ending. The concerto's final movement loomed like a storm neither could outrun. Its notes sprawled across their apartment floor, coffee-stained and scribbled with revisions. Lila's bow hovered over the strings, trembling. It's too much, she whispered. Their pain, their silence. How do we give it sound? Alex knelt beside her, ink smudging his cheek from all-night lyric writing. We don't, he said. We just let it pass through us. Dawn bled through the curtains as they played, their first run through a cacophony of clashing keys and snapped strings, Lila's frustration erupting in tears. Clara should have finished this herself. She hurled the sheet music, pages fluttering like wounded birds. Alex gathered them, smoothing creases with reverence. She tried, Lil. But some songs need two hearts to beat. He pressed Clara's ring into her palm, the one meant for Eleanor. Its diamond cracked but gleaming. Wear it, he said, not for them, for us. She slid it on, its weight foreign yet familiar. That night they played until their fingers bled, the concerto's bridge merging Clara's jazz riffs with Eleanor's classical rigor, Lila's modern dissonance with Alex's pop ballad ache. Neighbors pounded walls, quiet, but they played louder, the music a tempest, a ceasefire, a resurrection. At 3 a.m., a key change clicked, Lila's laugh ringing through the chaos. That's it, she gasped, the finale. It's not an ending, it's a question. Alex grinned. So let's leave it unanswered. They collapsed into sleep sheets. Tangled with sheet music, the ring gleaming between them, a silent vow to let the song live unfinished. The premiere was a collision of worlds, Vienna's elites sipping champagne next to subway buskers Clara had once fed, paparazzi elbowing music scholars, Julian lurking in the back, unrecognized in a hoodie, the stage lights dimmed, Lila's breath fogging the air. Ready? Alex whispered, his hand brushing hers. No, she said, but let's burn anyway. The first note shattered the hush, the concerto unfurling like a century-old secret. Lila's violin weeping Clara's regrets, Alex's voice raw with verses. Eleanor had scribbled in margins, "Love's a fugitive, not a ghost." The audience stilled, a collective breath held, as the music spiraled, arguing, forgiving, devouring, the players' sweat and tears staining the stage. Julian's fists clenched, his throat tight. This is what I wanted, he realized, to feel anything. The final movement approached. Lila's bow poised for the unresolved chord Clara and Eleanor had abandoned, but instead, she played a major seventh, bright and aching with hope. The crowd erupted, but Alex stepped forward, silencing them with a raised hand. "This isn't ours," he said. "It's yours." He invited a teen prodigy from the music school to the stage. "Finish it." The girl froze, then played a punk riff on her cello, the concerto splintering into something new, wild, alive. Eleanor's granddaughter, a hip-hop violinist, joined unscripted, then Julian, fingers trembling on the grand piano's edge. His first public play in decades. The music became a riot, a revolution. Clara and Eleanor's love letters projected overhead. "You were my accelerando, you were my fermata." The walls shook, critics wept, and somewhere, in the static between notes, the past and present kissed. The aftermath was a blur of flashbulbs and flight. Lila and Alex fleeing the after-parties for a dive bar's neon solace. Julian found them there, his hoodie damp with rain and regret. He faltered. "You were right," Alex sighed. "Save it." But Lila slid him a whiskey. "Talk." Julian's confession spilled, a lonely childhood parsing code while Alex partied, his hacks born of envy, not malice. "I just wanted the world to see me," he whispered. "Like they see you." Lila snorted. "The world sees versions, not people." She tossed him Clara's ring box. "Fix yourself. Don't waste life breaking others." He left, clutching the box like a grenade. The next morning, headlines blared: "Julian donates tech empire to music schools." His manifesto tweet: "Turns out, I'm a better patron saint than villain," trending beneath a selfie of him grinning with the teen cellist, her middle finger eclipsing his face. Alex and Lila laughed over burnt pancakes. "You think he'll stick?" she asked. "Doubt it," he said. "But let's bet on it anyway." Their wager sealed with syrup kisses. The music school's inbox overflowed. Donations, applications, a Grammy invite. Ignore it all. Lila said, "Today we're just us." They biked to the plaza, now buzzing with students. A mural of Clara and Eleanor kissing under the fountain, its paint still wet, kids screeching Vivaldi on tiny violins. Lila joined them, improvising a blues riff as Alex taught a boy to curse in rhythm. This, he thought, this is the fucking dream. No cameras, no chords, just the clamor of living. That night, under the mural, he knelt, not with a ring, but a question: "Will you fight with me forever?" Lila grinned. "Only if you promise to lose." Their embrace blurred into the mural's colors. A security guard's flash capturing the moment, the photo leaking as real love. The world sighed, then moved on. But they didn't care, their symphony playing on. Years later, the music school's halls thrummed with chaos and Chopin, Lila's students moshing to Beethoven, Alex's lyric workshops devolving into rap battles, Julian's hologram tech projecting Clara and Eleanor conducting duets from the clouds. "Kitschy," Lila groaned. "But the kids love it." He'd become their rogue benefactor, smuggling in prodigies from war zones and trailer parks. "Talent's talent," he'd shrug. His smirk softer now. Autumn leaves swirled as Lila and Alex walked the plaza, her belly round with their first child. "She'll hate music," Alex mused, rebel with a spreadsheet. Lila elbowed him. "She'll conduct orchestras with a lightsaber." Their banter quieted at Clara's memorial bench, its plaque reading, "Here sits the music, the mess, and the maybe." A student's violin echoed the unfinished concerto, now a rite of passage. Everyone adds a note. Lila said, "It'll never end." Alex pressed his palm to her stomach. This one's got a verse waiting. Dusk fell, their footsteps syncopated, the city's noise a distant hum. Remember when love felt like a secret? She asked. He kissed her silver-streaked hair. Still does. They turned home. The apartment's windows glowing, Clara's trunk now a coffee table, Eleanor's letters laminated under glass, their own love notes stuffed in the cracks. For the next idiots, Lila had joked, the night breathed, the concerto's refrain drifting up from the plaza, forever unfinished, forever alive, a lullaby for the dreamers, the broken, the brave, and somewhere, in the spaces between, two people danced, finally free, finally.